of disloyal government officials to oust and trusted pro-Trump people to replace them. This is according to more than a dozen sources familiar with the effort who spoke to Axios. The White House did not have any comment yet on this report. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois. He is on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
What are voters and our viewers to make of this report that not only the president in the White House, but also State Department, Defense, Homeland Security, getting rid of people who have ever expressed dissent or trying to, and stocking it with President Trump's loyalists?
I think the public should read it this way. The president wants a team of sycophants instead of a team of rivals, and that should be scary. Retired Navy Admiral just this weekend, McRaven, talked about if people like Joe McGuire can't speak the truth, we should all be afraid. It's understandable. No president likes to be given information or intelligence that doesn't comport with their policy. Well, a president's policy, any president, may work or it may not work. But if it doesn't comport to reality and the facts, it cannot work. If we're dealing with something that isn't the truth, we are less safe. So while the president may seem to believe in a deep state, Mr. President, there is no deep state. You are the state, and you need to hear the truth.
And, I mean, because you're on the Intelligence Committee, to what end? What happens once? I mean, it's already happening. This is already in the works. We've seen, as you point out, we've already seen people ousted who were perceived somehow to even express dissent. And then what happens when it's just loyalists? What happens to national security?
Well, we don't get critical information we need to make these choices. The intel information is on some sort of gradation of how good it is. You have to weigh that. But if you ignore it entirely, you're flying blind. I mean, I can't imagine during the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy saying, I'm going to pull this one off on my own. I'm not going to listen to anybody else. These are extremely dangerous times that we're facing. There should be no amnesia about the threats post 9/11 ever as we move forward. And there's certainly a number of threats throughout the world. To imagine that you can conduct policy as the leader of the free world with a hear no evil, speak no evil philosophy is extremely dangerous. The president said when he came in he doesn't need intelligence. When we learned in January of 2017 that the Russians had attacked our democratic process to favor one candidate over another, the president, instead of trying to understand that, instead of confronting the Russians as President Obama did, he did just the opposite. He attacked the intelligence community. They don't always get it right, but he seems to believe President Putin over Americans, and he's more worried about someone who has personal loyalty than he does worried about getting the facts.
Yeah. The president said that himself. I mean, we don't have to interpret that. In Helsinki, the president said that he believes Putin over his intel officials. But that leads me to that classified briefing that you were a part of, the Intelligence Committee was a part of. And I'm not asking you to share, obviously, any classified information with us. However, it is confusing what happened in that briefing, because afterwards, DNI, Joe McGuire, was ousted early from his job. Rick Grinnell, who is not qualified in terms of intelligence experience, has been put into the position of DNI. And there is confusing reporting about what happened in there. It sounds as though there was an intelligence official who went in and said that the Russians, the Kremlin, had developed a preference for President Trump, and all sorts of people have taken issue with that categorization. So now, here's some CNN reporting. It says a more reasonable interpretation of the intelligence is not that they have a preference. It's a step short of that. It's more that they understand the president is someone they can work with. He's a deal maker. That's a quote from a senior national security official. So is that what happened in that meeting?
Well, again, I can't speak as to what happened in that meeting, but let me put it this way. I've been on the committee 5 years. We learned in January of 2017 a unanimous intelligence community report said that the Russians were the ones that attacked the democratic process, and they did it to favor candidate Trump over candidate Clinton. I have seen nothing in the time since that contradicts that. The president's own people he ousted have said nothing but the fact that the threat is still there. D&I Coates, I believe, used the language that the danger lights are still flashing red. So the threat is still there, and by the president refuting that, he makes us less safe. After Bush-Gore, the last time our democratic process was put in question in a way, hanging chads and election equipment that wasn't up to par, we spent $3.5 billion to rectify that problem. I've sponsored the legislation to buy new election equipment to at least be part of that protection, and it's only $800 million. So we're not ready, and the president makes us less ready when he calls it a hoax and when he doesn't call out Putin for doing this. And finally, there are no coincidences with this administration. If you're not fully on board with this president and agree with his policy, whatever the truth is, you're gone. You disagree with the king, we don't want you around.
Congressman Mike Quigley, we appreciate getting your perspective this morning. Thank you.
So, Senator